So let's talk about common mistakes in lead docket. I'm getting there. I'm gonna pull my screen up. Can you? No, you can't see it yet.
That's okay. I can stop sharing when you're ready.
Thank you for that. And then we had our list also of things that we wanted to just touch bases on, right? And I'm trying to put that up as well.
Yeah, so most of the common mistakes that we see in lead docket, for some background, are not using the system quite as efficiently. Oftentimes your team will have tasks that they just don't use, unanswered leads that just end up ignored. They go into a status and they just sit there. So we're just going to go over how to check for that, how to look and make sure that your team is using lead docket effectively, and then how to correct those common mistakes. So how to clear those tasks out, and just make sure that everybody has a very usable working dashboard that they can check every single day.
Love that. Okay, that wasn't what I needed. Thank you. So I think and you guys jump in, by the way, Shade and Edie, because you guys have a lot of experience with this as well. But the first thing that I would say that I see a lot is if you look at your chase leads, and of course, ours is a demo environment, so it doesn't help as much. But if you look at your chase leads in your chase box or your scheduled leads, that's where you can quickly glance at, hey, here's a lead scheduled for 2 days ago or 3 days ago that's passed. If you ever see a scheduled date that's passed, that lead should probably not be in schedule. It should have been followed up and it should have been moved to another status, even if it's rescheduled, but it's rescheduled to a future date, right? So those are the easy ones to spot. If you see a scheduled date that's in the past, somebody either didn't update that or didn't reach out to a lead that was supposed to be reached out. So that's an easy spot in there. You often see this exclamation point in here that indicates that there is a task pending in there that didn't get completed in time. Chase is a little bit more elaborate, but you also see that same thing is in the parentheses here, you can see your substatuses, so your attempt, and you often will see a lead here that's a first attempt lead that's been there for 2 or 3 days. So one of two things happen is either your team never called them, right, and nobody reached out to that lead, or they did call them but didn't change the substatus, which is equally problematic, right, in the sense that it doesn't allow you to be able to see what's going on. When you'll see a lead that's in chase and it's been there for a long time, it's still on the first attempt, on the second attempt or something, that indicates that there's either a follow-up issue, I would say it's a bigger issue if you're not calling them back, or there is just a training issue that you're not moving. Maybe they're calling that lead, but they're not changing the substatuses. These are what I see the most frequent problems that I see. So that being said, actually on the dashboard there, you can see like any of these exclamation points actually indicate a task that is not completed in time into this lead, right? So if you ever see these exclamation points, sometimes there's a good reason for it, and sometimes they're only late a few minutes. It's not something that you're gonna be. If you go into your dashboard right now, into your lead docket, you see this and you freak out because your team is dropping the ball. Not necessarily. Some of these tasks may be set in a way that they are making your team look bad and they're just being late all the time, which I think brings to our second point, which is or not properly set tasks or unuseful tasks, right? That's our second thing, Shannon, that we see a lot is, if you go into your lead docket, by the way, right now, and I see a lot of this. If you go into your lead dockets, into tasks right here on the left side, by default, when you open this page, you're only going to be seeing the tasks assigned to your user, but you have the ability to pull this up and see everybody's tasks. So if you see a user, sometimes I open this and most people have proper, number of tasks, but you see somebody who has like 350 tasks or 1,000 tasks set up to their names. That means there's probably either a not useful task set up and they're just getting tasked and ignoring that task, which is not a good way to do that, right? or it's really unrealistic what you're asking them to do, and they're just are not clicking that task completed or something like that. But there's something to be looked at when you see a really high number of tasks in here. Now, we can talk about ways to clear that. There is a way that you can reassign tasks. You can do that in bulk. But before you just go ahead and clear it and call it ready, I would say we need to figure it out. Why is that happening? Is there a task in there that shouldn't exist, or that is set to be completed in 30 minutes? I know that the classic one is the assigned one that I always have that issue, right? By default, lead docket, when you put a lead under assigned, the task is about, is it 30 minutes, I think, Sade, right? By default,
Yep.
it's like 30 minutes later is going to task your intake team to follow up with the attorney. Now, I see this often in firms that don't take 30, they can't do that in 30 minutes. It's going to take 2 hours or 4 hours, sometimes 24 hours to get that information. So you get a bunch of tasks that are all overdue. And it's just because the timeline is just unrealistic for the process of that firm. So if you're using well tasks, you're going to see not a lot of exclamation points in here. You're going to see a really good task list that's useful for your team. The team can actually take advantage of this task list and work their way through these tasks. It's going to help guide their work. It's going to help me, okay, I got here this morning. What do I have to do? I open my task list and I have a direction of what to do. So a properly set task list is going to give your team a lot of good basis to work from. Does that make sense? Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's good. And one thing when we say that, and we can go ahead and show how to make sure those tasks are accurate. But you'll notice, for example, in our test environment, a lot of our outstanding tasks from a year ago are entering settlement information. And a lot of you guys, if you don't already, should have your settlement information coming from FileVine automatically into Lead Docket. And if you don't, absolutely let us know and reach out. But if you do, you don't really need a task like that either. So that's probably why our team's not going in and doing it in this fake organization, is because we don't need to. It's already in there. And those tasks aren't being cleared out. So what do we do to get rid of that task if we just don't use something like that? Is found underneath our task templates.
That's right. Let's go there. So if you go to manage and task templates.
And so we have all of these tasks turned on, enter settlement amount. It's really as easy, at least to stop it going forward, as just disabling it, and then you can delete it altogether.
That's right. If you just click it right there, it's disabled. It won't trigger that task anymore. Maybe you want to turn it back on, so you don't have to delete it altogether yet if you're not sure, but that just clicking that box, that's disabled right there. And that's as simple as, looking at that. If you want to say, oh, actually, it needs to be changing some of the stats or some of the actual settings of that task, you can actually make some adjustments in here to trigger it at the right time, or to trigger it to the right person as well, right? You often get tasks that these tasks is sent to the intake, but you can send it to other roles. You have multiple roles in there as well. So task management is a huge one. Do we want to talk about how to clear tasks? I feel like it's a very powerful powerful information.
Yeah. Proceed with caution. It is one of the only bulk actions you can do in Lead Docket, and I'll only want to leave it in the hands of someone who should be making that executive decision for sure.
That's right. I'm a little hesitant of showing these things because these are the things that you don't want to just go ahead and do it without really thinking this through. But yeah, you can go here in your reports, and if you scroll down to the bottom here, this bulk actions kind of box, you will have delete tasks and reassign tasks. So I could go in there and say, I'm going to delete all the tasks assigned to myself. And that actually you can pick as well, right? Which I've done this before, where you can come in here and just, I want to pick this 20 tasks that I got today, and I want to remove them or reassign it to somebody else. That's also doable through this thing. So I like to add a note I always like to add a note. So there's a record of this here, deleted by bulk by Ivan. And then I'm gonna go ahead and delete some tests from my boom.
Now, I would warn against something that I run into often. If you'll switch it over to my currently assigned to Sade.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you're just kind of casually looking at here, you're not going to notice that that task date actually says 2 days from now. That is a future task. So when
Oh,
you're in here, you got to be mindful of that timeline because you could be deleting things that have not been done yet.
very good catch. Okay, that's an important one. That's an important one. So that is some task management. Do we have, I know we have some people in the audience. If anybody has a question, by the way, guys, this hour of free help is very much free flow. And do you have your lead docket up? You want to share your screen, or you want to talk to us about an issue that you're having that we can tackle right now? That's really what we want to do here today. It's not supposed to be just us blabbing away. So you have a Q&A button, right? At the bottom of your Zoom, you have a Q&A button that I'm going to pull up. So make sure that I don't miss any questions. But please, guys, feel free to ask questions in there. It could be specific to your lead docket. It's really, sometimes you have an issue that somebody else has as well. So we really were able to pivot here and talk about your specific questions in your specific system. So call your intake manager, say, what was that question that you had about lead docket? Bring it in here, and we'll be able to answer it for you guys, okay? It's really supposed to be a conversation more than anything. So please feel free to send anything in there. If that being said, what was our next most common, did we talk about? No.
Yeah, we talked about the chase. I think we probably want to dive into a little bit more on how they would know outside of the dashboard, what kind of reports are available to verify how long leads are lingering in a certain status. So like on the leads page, and then we can do the aging leads report.
Take it from here, Sade. It's all
Okay.
That's a good one. I like that. I like that one. That's an important one. So I'll let you take it from there. Both of
Been
it.
trapped. All right. So same exact screen, same exact big firm. But you're gonna notice that he already showed you on our dashboard if we've got, and I've got this filtered to myself. Let's go ahead and take a look at all of our leads. He already showed you. So I can just from this page alone see that we've had a lead in chase for 9 months. And if this were a real firm and we were doing real business, that would be not good at all, because that is far too long. So we need to make sure we're staying on top of how to catch these. And there's a couple of different parts where you can do that. So right on the dashboard, I can see it. If you have a lot of volume in your chase, you're not going to be able to view that from the dashboard. You're going to need to look at a deeper view or check out a specific report for that. So let's go ahead and click over into our leads page. And presumably you've probably been here before if you've been working in lead docket, but you'd be surprised how missed this tab is, because you can do a lot of work from your dashboard. You can click into leads. This is just a quick, easy way to come grab a list of everybody. So let's go ahead and filter for that chase once again. And here I can go ahead and see all of our chase leads that I need to pull. And I can see 8 days ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 9 months ago. You're going to notice it's only showing you 5 items. This is not where you can get a full comprehensive report. This is to pull quick lists of leads that are under your name and that are assigned to you so that you can check your own. Now, if we want to do a full report, so I need to go in and see I'm a manager and I want to check on my staff, we're going to use the reports tab. And there's a couple different ways that you can pull this. One of my reports that I like to go to is the aging leads report, and that is going to show you how long leads have been lingering in each status. So it's going to default. We're going to disregard this because some statuses are intended to have leads in them for a long time. For example, let's go ahead and go to referral review. And I want to see, well, we don't refer out in our firm because it's fake. We're going to go to referred. I think we use this one. Yep, there we go. So leads that have been in a referred status for more than 15 days, this is normal. You are going to have leads that stay unreferred. They might be under review. It might take a long time for people to get signed up, depending on the case type. So this is one that I probably wouldn't need to come in here and check, but it's still a useful tool. Unlike our chase, which I mentioned, if I want to see a list of all of our chase leads that are older than 15 days, this is actually still only pulling these. Are you?
Yeah, that's it though. No, what do you mean?
Oh, you're right. We only
Yeah.
have 5.
Yeah. No, we only have those.
You're
That's
right. No, you're totally right. Yeah. So it's pulling all of those leads that are in that chase status that have been there for longer than 15 days.
That's correct. Yeah.
So if you were a high volume firm, this would show you a list of all of those leads. And then you could easily click into them and make changes as you need to. So if you notice that you've got a long list of chase leads that need to be moved out of chase, you need to put them into lost because they've been in there for over a year. You may come in here. You're going to select your new status. As Ivan mentioned, when you're doing any bulk update, you want to make sure to include leads or notes, and then you would just hit save. And that's going to move all of those leads that really don't need to be in chase any longer. You don't need to be sending them messages because they're older into the appropriate status.
That's right. Do we have a question? Somebody raise their hand? I have somebody raise their hand. I got a little message. Oh, I guess we don't have any questions. So if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A instead of raising the hand. I think somebody raised the hand and I got a notification here, but
I actually
you have a question?
I actually don't think that they have access to the chat. So I think it's just the Q&A.
The Q&A, that's right. The Q&A. Apologize. Yeah, go to the Q&A button, drop your question in there, and then we can open the microphone if you need as well, if you want to chime in. Somebody raised their hand in here, but I can't really see it. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions in there and interrupt us at any time, and we can get more information.
Perfect. We can go ahead and while we wait and see if any questions pull in, we can bring up our next common mistake that we see, especially for high volume firms, is going to be your text messaging and your phone usage and how to check in what you guys are currently using, whether you need to add in additional numbers, if you need to add in additional minutes. And all of that is also found in a report.
That's a big one. Yeah. If anybody in the audience has, a high volume, especially for high volume one, that's a really big one that we often see firms paying quite a lot of money monthly for those overages, right? Not, you're going over your allotted minutes and or a lot of messages. So that's definitely a big one. If you're in Lead Docket right now, you can go and follow Sade's steps in here, but that you might find a good place right there to save some money right now, actually.
I'll go ahead and start just at the beginning, just to make sure everybody's familiar. But inside Lead Docket, when you're texting, you have an assigned Lead Docket phone number. You may have multiple already, but you probably have at least one, because otherwise you will not be able to send text messages. And you can find that by going to your manage and phone numbers. And so if you have any call tracking, that's going to appear here. But what you're looking for are those main phone numbers, those Lead Docket assigned phone numbers. So these numbers are what you're texting clients to and receiving text from. And if they call these numbers, you have them set to redirect out to a phone number. Those messages and those minutes are applying to this report that we're about to show you. So we're going to go into our reports option. We're going to scroll down over to phone, and you're going to see phone number usage. And when we click in that, it's going to show you all these numbers. We use ours very minimally. This is not what yours is going to look like, but you can see here, it's going to show you how many minutes are allowed. So we're allowed 600 minutes and we're allowed 2,000 texts for our one phone number, or no, we have 2 phone numbers. So you're going to notice actually this is twice the number. So if you only have one, this is actually 300 for you and 1,000, which brings us to say that every phone number you add, it will add on an additional 300 and then an additional 2,000 texts or messages.
I think most firms add one number and just leave it at that, right? So every time you go in here, you're going to see 300 at the very top and 1,000, like Sade said. So most firms are just going to add one number and leave it at that. But then if you use it more, where we said, where we have overages, of course, ours is all zeros because we don't really use this account. But check if you have any overages in there, right?
And a
Yep.
phone number is $20 a month. So if your overages are more than $20 a month, it makes sense to add a phone number. You don't have to use them both. You can still use one number to communicate for your team if you don't want to have mixed phone numbers or multiple phone numbers out there, but it does give you the increased usage in both of those options.
That was the key for me. That's the part that I didn't know actually before this, is that you can add those numbers and not use them.
Yep.
Because I was like, I don't want to use multiple numbers. I want to use only one number, right? That's your main number. When you add them, you're just adding to your allocated numbers of messages and phone calls. You're just going to have that number in the system. You pay monthly for that number, but actually increases your total limits. So you don't need to use it. That was the one thing that I didn't know about this. And like I said, I had a few firms paying $500, $800 every month of overages, and you cut that, a third of that, and you get the same amount. So that's a big area for you to save some money right now.
And help me, Ivan, make sure I'm saying this correctly. But you might be thinking about what the minutes mean, because you don't have calling through Lead Docket. You're calling through your own phone services, your own systems. Anything that's through a call tracking service, an answering service, even if you have it linked up with Lead Docket, that's not applying to it. Where those minutes are going to come from is any internal outbound calling you have set up, or when people call that texting number, even though we're rerouting it to a different line, it's still using that system. And so it's still going to apply those minutes if they're calling that number frequently.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So, which the call functionality is I don't know, we don't talk about it. Many people don't use it. I think it's an awesome functionality.
Yeah.
Maybe not for super large firms, but for smaller firms, it makes a lot of sense. It gives you a lot of tracking. So if you don't know what we're talking about the ability to call through Lead Docket and have that call recorded and logged into your system. So you see, like, that lead right there had a call 27 days ago. It was 13 seconds long. You can hear the recording if you click that button. That was me testing something, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not going to click it just in case.
It was just me like, hello. Yeah. Anyway, if you don't have that on, if you go to your Lead Docket, I think that's an awesome feature. It's part of your Lead Docket. It's not an add-on. You don't pay extra for it. I love to recommend that. I think it's a super useful feature. So if you don't have that on your Lead Docket, I mean, you can ask, oh, I didn't know we had Hello Kitty there. That the lead that you added.
I'm always trying to find which of my test leads have the information I'm looking for.
Okay.
She doesn't have any contact information. She doesn't want to hear from us.
There
we go.
Yeah.
So this is a client free zone. This is what it would look like. We didn't have this on Ivan's test lead there, but this is what it would look like to initiate that call.
That's right. So are there any questions? I'm going to take a moment again. If anybody wants to chime in and ask us, we want to solve real problems here. We want you to.
We got one.
There it is. We got one. Yeah. Thank you, Derek. And feel free, anybody, to send questions. We'll try to get you your questions after Derek's question. But if not, we can always follow up and give you some direction there. All right, should we go through this couple of questions that we have?
Yeah, for sure. Let's pause and to read.
All right. So this is Derek. I'll read it out loud here so we know. One of the coworkers is having an issue where Lead Docket drops the address of the lead sometimes. It is only the street, the apartment number, and the city stay in the lead. Oh. There when she hits the save button, only realizes she's gone when she attempts to send the lead to file one. That is a good. I've never seen that disappear. I do say though, I have a few situations where I've heard you just don't hit the save button, right? I have a few situations where you go through that and then you get out of that window, you move to something else and you don't save the lead. Lead Docket does not save the information as you type. So if you go into a tab, start filling out some questions and then move to another tab and don't save it, you will not be there. I'm wondering if that is your request, if that is the situation, Derek. I personally have never seen that happen. Shade, have you seen like just
With
information?
the address, lead docket will automatically recognize certain pieces of information, like the difference between a cell phone and a home phone. And so it will purposefully move that field for you if it knows where it came from, but I haven't seen that happen with an address before.
Yeah.
I would be curious if you can throw it in as a separate question. Is she confirming that it's not in lead docket before the push, or is it being lost between the lead docket to FileVine push? Because that could be something to do with mapping versus something to do inside of lead docket.
Very good question. Yeah. And I see A. Williamson is raising the hand. So I wonder if we can bring you or give you the ability to talk, or if you want to just ask a question, type your question, and then we can kind of let you chime in if you want. Hey, Williamson, I see your, here it is. Talking permitted. That was great. Aja, did you do that magic?
I did.
Okay, so we have A. Williamson, and we're gonna go back, Derek, to your question, but I did want to just jump in here. A. Williamson, can you hear us? Can you? Yes, we cannot hear you. I don't know if you're talking in there, but we'll give him a minute. We'll kind of go back to answer Derek's questions, and then we'll give, Mr. A. Williamson the chance to chime in.
For that second question, Derek, do you know, is she trying to send it from lead docket using this new VineSign feature? Is it the new method of sending documents? Or are you guys still using that traditional send documents via VineSign? Because it's different. So if somebody presses this new VineSign button that appeared recently, this is going to be using their own VineSign account. And so if this is what's happening, likely she doesn't have a VineSign license, and so she can't send it, or she doesn't have certain permissions. This button is all using one VineSign license. It's all using the same owner. So this should not be giving her any issues. I would imagine it's probably something related to using these features. But if you can give us a little more clarification, we can dive into that a bit.
And actually, I just saw here in the questions that A. Williamson is the person who's having the address issues.
Oh,
So
that's what the raised hand was.
that's what the raised hand was. It's like, it's me. So yeah, the address issue, like Shade was saying, I don't know if you can talk. You have the ability to talk by now. So if you have a microphone, you can chime in here and tell us more what's going on. But it's either, if it's a problem between lead docket and pushing to FileVine, that could be a mapping issue that's in lead docket but doesn't show up in FileVine. But if it's inside lead docket, Shade, I've never seen like something disappearing from lead docket. That I've never seen before. Between lead docket and FileVine, sometimes there's some issues in there. So if you want to send more information on that or chime in, I think you don't have a, oh, here it is. I got some more questions. Oh, here it is. It is keeping the entire address and all the information in the intake tab except the street. It will keep the apartment numbers when applicable in town zip code. It is lost even before you push your FileVine, so it's inside lead docket. Let's go ahead and do a test if there's something that we can think about. Here's what I would, by the way, Williamson, if this is something that you can reproduce, like if you go into another lead and reproduce that, that makes it way easier for us to solve that problem. So if you can go into your lead in there and try to reproduce that and do a screen grab or something like this and reproduce the error, then we can definitely go in there and bring support and do a lot in there. But it is, let's see, you have to take pictures of the street name. That's funny. So let's figure it out. Shadi, can we maybe go through that process of, if you go into your contact right there, I guess what is happening here is right on the lead creation, not on an edit. Or is it that right there? Type in something. Let's see if you can reproduce something similar. And then if you go back to that, yeah, it kind of stays in there unless, so if you create is that what you're doing, right? You're going to the address, you type in 123, you pick something in there. Now, oh, let me ask this. Try to click on that instead of, yeah, if you click on that, it's going to automatically fill out the rest of it. So you see, just Shadi is filling out the kind of the required fields in there. And we'll create that lead in a minute. And I've never seen that get dropped entirely. Yeah, see the everything is in there, so I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe reach out to support. If you can reproduce it, that makes it 100 times kind of just easier to do. Here I'm gonna click these questions done, and we'll move on to the next ones.
Yeah, it looks like it's from Paul. It says, how can I run a report to see what % of my new client calls are getting signed up by a particular intake specialist? So there's quite a few reports that you can pull to monitor what's happening with leads, the results, and your intake performance. Our reports look a little bit more pitiful because ours is not a active firm. So you're going to notice that when I pull this, it's not going to be as detailed as what yours would show. But once again, we're going to go back to our reports and you'll see the statistics. And the one that we're looking for right now is going to be by role. And so by role is going to allow you to go, okay, I want to take a look at my intake specialists. I want to take a look. We'll go ahead and leave this time frame as is. And then I'll just hit run report. And as if I scroll down, I can see we've got 2 active intake specialists. And it's going to break down how many leads they have in each, as well as a conversion of wanted leads. So you can see here, Ivan converts 50% of his leads. Vine Skills converts 0% of their leads. And
Yeah,
that is
if you increase the date, just go to the begin date, just put 2022.
okay.
Yeah, because that way you're gonna bring a bunch more, and it's gonna give you a little. Let's see if that's gonna break the whole thing, but
Yeah, that's much better.
let me give you a little bit more information there. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see our primary user here is Vine Skills team. So you can see we have 261 signed up, 155 lost. Our 437 of those are wanted, and our conversion is 60%. And just to make sure you're not familiar with what the wanted term means, that's going to include typically any leads that you wanted to stay in-house. So anything you didn't refer, anything you didn't reject, but that is customizable. So you can always change that if you need to.
Yeah. Now, Paul, I will say though, in his question, he's asking something that I hear sometimes, and it's not as easy. So what Shadi is showing you is showing you the leads assigned to that person. It's not showing you calls, right? Because you ask here, and your question is specific. You mentioned a couple of things that are not easy to do in that report, which is how many of my new client calls are getting signed up by a particular intake specialist. So what that report is showing you is how many leads are assigned to that person, how many are in signed up, how many are in each one of the statuses, and calculating that wanted versus the signed up. Yeah, the lead creator could be one where you're looking at how many leads are created by that person. So I don't know if that's going to give you what you really want.
So the difference there is the originator. So when you're adding a lead or converting an opportunity, the assigned to intake is who I'm physically either changing it to, or it could be myself, but the creator is whoever is actually turning this into a lead.
Yeah.
So that could be one potential source of your new incoming calls. If you have it set up as an opportunity, you're going to be able to grab the creator for whoever is turning those opportunities into leads. But go ahead, Ivan. You can.
No, that's a great call. That may actually help you, Paul, get closer to your data. is if you use a created by versus an assigned to intake. If you happen to have a team where some people are creating it, but somebody else is taking it from there, using the created by can be helpful in that sense. But it doesn't really include calls. I don't know if you want to particularly talk about calls. I don't think there is a report to see calls that are signed up. That's a dashboard. That's a dashboard question in there. In our dashboard, we can do something similar to that. So that is something that if you, Paul, if you want to get pretty specific with that reporting and know exactly how many of your new calls are turning into what's the status after that call or something like this. If you want to get a little bit more specific, that's a reporting that is not available in Lead Docket, but we can do it on our dashboard. So in our dashboard, for those who are not familiar with, it's just a tool that we developed at Vine Skills that gives you dashboarding capabilities out of your Lead Docket information. So you get to do those more advanced reports like what Paul was talking about. So that's something that we can do on our dashboard if that's a need that you want. So Paul, if you want to explore a little bit more specific needs in there, let us know and we'll show you. We don't want to go into that right now because that's pretty particular for your firm and may be involving some, another step in there. So, but that's what we got there. I'm gonna mark that one question. If anybody has any other questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat on the Q&A.
And just to jump in here, I answered you in a typed message, but anybody is welcome to email either of us with questions or curiosities. We can always take a quick look or just give a little bit of feedback. And you can reach us at both of our first names. So Ivan@vineskills.com or Sade@vineskills.com.
That's right. Yes, feel free to send us anything. So yeah, that was Williamson on the address issue. I don't know what's going on in there. That's something for us to look into.
Yes, for sure.
Well,
I brought it up earlier, but I would like to point it out because I actually do get this question somewhat regularly, or not regularly, but often enough to warrant the conversation. One thing about Lead Docket with the contact information is it does know what phone numbers are able to be texted. So one thing that your team might run into is you might add a phone number into the mobile phone number and it's gone when you go back to that client. And that's because if they gave you a landline and you put it in the mobile phone spot, it's gonna switch it over to a home phone, and vice versa. If you put in a cell phone into the home phone, it's gonna move it into the mobile phone. And it's because it knows if it can send SMS to that number or if it can't, and it doesn't want to misclassify it. So if I add someone's phone number and I go to send them a text message and I don't even have the option to text them, it's because it wasn't a cell phone number. It was a landline and it moved it accordingly. So that will happen to you. It'll just pop up every now and then. And you can always see what someone's number is when you go to their lead and what type of number that is. So if I go into one of our test leads here, once again, I can see here's the phone number and it knows it's a mobile number and it would reclassify this if it needed to. So just a little tangent there.
it's actually really good, Sade. That's a really good note in there. Okay, we want to maybe talk about a couple of other. Well, we talked about a few common mistakes. We talked about best practices. Maybe we get to dive into a little bit of reporting for you guys.
Yeah, do you want to take the screen back?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
And I think we are coming up on the end here, but I think that's a good way to wrap up the conversation too.
Great. So if there's any other questions, now is your time to kind of throw something in there. While I want to show this. So Shade was saying, I think the leads here is a report that's very useful is actually very useful for people who are working in their lead docket. If you want more of a management perspective here and look at your lead docket, if you click on reports right there, first thing that I would say is for most firms, you're going to see these green boxes here all be 0. And that the reason why you don't have your cost per lead and your cost per case right up here is because you are not adding your expenses into lead docket. So that's one thing for you to know. If you have those zeros in there, there is this capability in lead docket that I find it really cool, which is the ability of adding your marketing expenses right in there. And then lead docket is going to calculate for you automatically how much are you spending per case, how much are you spending per lead. And it even is going to break it down by your marketing sources. So here are your advertising costs, and it's going to have how many leads you got, what's your conversion rate for marketing sources. It's a really helpful data point for you to have. What I normally find, and I work with several firms that start adding expenses, is it's simpler than it seems to do this. You can do it via spreadsheet, import once a month, and get some expenses in there and populate these fields for you. So right now, I'm just gonna point out, if you see a bunch of zeros in here, that's because we're just not using the expenses part. The average fee, similarly though, that's slightly different though, but that's that has to do with your FileVine and lead docket connection, or if you're not using FileVine, just with entering settlement information into your leads. The settlement information is what's going to calculate the average fee. So I'm going to see what's my average fee per case type that is bringing this information from your settled cases that you have added a fee on. If you have FileVine, that fee is pulled automatically from FileVine. If you set up it correctly with the FileVine connection and the phase mapping, you'll be able to pull automatically your fees out of your FileVine and put it back into lead docket, which is I highly recommend. That way you get your actually average fee values straight into lead docket. And by crossing your average fee values with your average cost or your total cost, you get your cost, you get your ROI, right? Ultimately, that's the the number that you will get there for your marketing side is your ROI. So I wanted to touch on this kind of marketing costs and average right now. I see Derek had another question, but we'll talk about Derek. We'll follow up with you, by the way. I saw Emmy sent us a message here as well with the PDF. And you guys, Derek, if I'm correct, Meldon Law, we're working with you guys. Our FileVine team is working with you guys. So if you're a client of Vine Skills, we'll chime in and we'll kind of connect with whoever's working with you. And let's see if we can kind of get into your lead docket, look around, see what's going on in there, see if we can help figure that out. So we'll follow up with you on that one, Derek. If anybody has any other questions in there, like that we're not afraid of getting into your lead docket and pulling some stuff up and getting your hands dirty in there and solving that issue. So we'll talk about that, Derek. We'll go directly to you guys, okay? For now, I know that we are kind of running on time. So I just wanted to touch on these marketing reports for now. You can get in more details if you have more questions about reporting. We'll be doing this, I guess, next month, right? The first Wednesday, I believe, or every month, we'll be doing this again. So bring more questions, send them in the meantime. We'll be happy to kind of tackle them in the meantime.
Sorry, I would like to do a quick note. I was taking a look at the email that you sent over on this address issue. And I actually added the address into a test lead. So it's recognizing it as a real number. But one thing to be mindful of with lead docket and really any software is if you have things set to autofill, sometimes it will try to put in like a password or a username into some of these fillable spaces. So in address, if I go to try to type in like 123 Charming Lane, if Ivan had and we don't do that typically on our computers. We don't have an autofill set up to avoid that issue. But if you have
Oh.
something set up, it may actually try to put in a password here, and that is absolutely not going to save. And the reason it's doing that is because it is a searchable field. So that would be one thing to know. It's not necessarily something in Lead Docket. It could be your Chrome settings or your browser settings are trying to autofill it with information that isn't an address. Even if you click on the address, you just need to make sure you're definitely double checking, because I have seen that happen for sure. And that could definitely be causing some issues there.
That's a great catch, Ashley. That makes a lot of sense to me. So, Emmy, check your browsers. Check if you're auto-filling this by any chance with your browser settings.
I would especially if it's only happening sometimes, I would check if you could remove your saved passwords or even go into a separate Chrome and try adding leads and see if you have the same issue replicated for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great catch. All right, I gotta wrap it up.
Yes.
Right? We have we'll wrap it up. It was great. Thank you everybody for joining. We'll be doing this again first Wednesday of every month. If you subscribe to this one, AJ, I believe they will get some notification of the next one. But if not, I mean, we might be able to kind of keep you posted. Is there anything else that we need to say? No?
I think that's it. And yes, everybody will be getting a notification a couple hours before the next session.
Fantastic. Thank you, AJ, for setting this up, by the way, and for everybody to join. We'll be in touch. If you guys have any questions in the meantime, of course, send us your questions and we'll see you again in a month. Right?
All right.
Good.